As we move forward, we do need some guidance to provide essential context and a solid framework for our path. We are privileged to have Linde Lindqvist from the Swedish Institute of Human Rights with us today. His insights will shed light on a critical question as: is the inclusion of indigenous peoples in projects that concern us merely a gesture of goodwill? Or are there legal principles and frameworks that can offer us a clear direction? Over to you, Linde.
So thank you so much, and thank you to Michael and to Maya and to all the organizers for this event. It's been amazing to be here. And as was said, my name is Linde Lindqvist. I'm actually originally from Bjurholm, just 70 kilometers from here. And that meant that I also attended high school in Umeå, or upper secondary school in Umeå at Mimerskolan, which is just across the street from here. So the last time I was in this room, we had physical education here. So I remember a floorball tournament in the spring of 2002. That was the last time I was in this room, and I remember scoring 2 goals. So I have very fond memories of this room. And just earlier, I actually learned that this very building was one of the Nordic contributions to the World Exhibition in Chicago in 1893. So it's a room packed with history already, and I think, I mean, just having this event today has really, I think, been very, very inspiring for me. And I think, I mean, it's a silly example, me playing floorball here in this building and so on, but I think it really speaks to something that has been very central today, and that's the kind of notion that the past is not dead, that the past is still alive, it's not even past. And we all have these many different sort of temporal layers in our existence that don't go away. That means also oppressions from the past and sad events, and but also the kind of the power of struggles from the people who have come before us. So when I left Umeå in 2005, and I moved to Lund, where I studied human rights and did my PhD in human rights in 2014. And since then, I've been teaching and researching human rights in Uppsala and University College in Stockholm. And I've been very intrigued by how the Nordic countries have often played a very active role in international efforts for human rights, yet have not always been very eager to live up to these ideals at a national level. So recently I supervised a student named Julia Karlsson who investigated Sweden's actions in the negotiations on the UN Genocide Convention of 1948. So Julia, she demonstrated how Sweden, despite supporting this convention, actively worked to exclude a provision on so-called cultural genocide. So they wanted to admit that, and they together with a number of other countries, succeeded. So that's not part of the Genocide Convention today. And Julia found out that this was due to concerns that such a provision, just including cultural genocide in that convention, could lead to international criticism against Sweden. And the Swedish delegate at the time said very explicitly at the UN that questions could be raised whether Sweden actually committed a cultural genocide when we Christianized the Sami people. So it was very explicit that they did not want to shed light on that history. So I think the issue of protecting the rights of indigenous peoples and minorities has sort of always been a weak spot in Sweden's, and to some extent the other Nordic countries, since the international human rights system was set in place just after the Second World War. So just a couple of years ago, I decided to pause my academic career to join the Swedish Institute for Human Rights in Lund. And this institute is a quite new independent government agency, which was established in January 2022, and it's intended to serve as Sweden's national human rights institution in accordance with the so-called Paris Principles that the UN adopted in 1993. So these national human rights institutions, they exist in more than 120 countries around the world. In fact, it was just until recently, it was only Malta and Sweden among the EU countries that did not have such an institution. So we are among the last of the EU countries to join that club. So our institute's mandate is regulated by Swedish law, and this law, among other things, it states that we should monitor, investigate, and report on how well Sweden fulfills its international obligations in the field of human rights. And that's all human rights, all international obligations on human rights. And this means that we have a very broad range of issues on our radar. Just to mention a few, we are now working on things like protection of human rights within crime prevention and law enforcement, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, technology and human rights, the rights of asylum seekers and irregular migrants, children's rights, the relationship between human rights and climate change, and issues of racism and discrimination. And we also have a special mandate regarding the rights of persons with disabilities. So we have quite a range of different things that are sort of within our mandate. And one of the conventions that we monitor is the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. This covenant is not very well known in Sweden, but it was adopted by the United Nations in 1966. And it provides legal form to many basic human rights that are contained in the more famous Universal Declaration of Human Rights from 1948. And these includes rights to equal pay for equal work, the right to just and favorable conditions of work, trade union rights, the right to social security, and the right to an adequate standard of living, the right to health, the right to education, and the right to participate in cultural life. So just 2 weeks ago, actually, the international committee that oversees this covenant conducted a review of how well Sweden performs in the protection of these rights. And as part of that review, we as a national human rights institution, we contributed by writing a report. It looks like this. It's a short report, and I actually placed a few copies on one of the tables down in the corner, close to the coffee, so quite strategically placed, I must say. But it's available both in Swedish and English, so feel free to take a copy if you're very interested. So we contributed by writing this report that supplements information from the state and from the Sami parliament and civil society organizations. And we were also present in Geneva to interact with the committee, which consists of 18 independent experts from around the world. So I think all of those who followed the discussions, including myself, were quite overwhelmed by all the different topics that were brought up for discussion. So they included everything from drug policies to housing policies to questions of harassment and discrimination in schools, and to questions of how to measure poverty, for instance. But there was also strong Sami presence on site in Geneva. There was representatives from the Sami parliament, from Amnesty Sapmi, and also from the Sami radio. That was the only media channel following this important review of how Sweden performs on human rights, the Sami radio. And the committee also asked many tough and precise questions about the rights of the Sami people in Sweden. And I think this focus on Sami rights in this particular committee is quite interesting because the covenant itself, this international agreement, does not directly address the rights of indigenous peoples. You wouldn't find the word indigenous peoples' rights in the covenant. What is included in this covenant is the right of peoples to self-determination. And as you may know, this right was originally about freeing former colonies from colonial rules. But over time, it has been the interpretation of this principle has been expanded. I was reminded by that when we talked earlier about the concept of decolonization, what it actually means. And over time, I think this concept also internationally has been more expanded. And now this right of peoples to self-determination has become a really important tool for in claiming indigenous rights. So in our report, we noted a number of things related to Sami rights in Sweden. We noted how we are currently witnessing rapid exploitation of land and natural resources in these parts of the country, an exploitation that the government usually justifies by pointing to the need for a green transition. And we note several examples of how the rights of the Sami people are not being respected in these processes. The case of Galok or Kalak being only one of them. And we also mentioned the 2002 Act on Consultation in Matters of Special Importance to the Sami people. And we think that this act is an important step forward, but we also note that it has many shortcomings and doesn't live up to the international standards for free, prior, and informed consent. So, as I said, the committee asked a number of different questions on these topics during its session in Geneva, and I would not say that it's an exaggeration to claim that the response of the Swedish delegation did not impress the observers in the room, nor did they impress the committee. You could tell that they were quite, they expected more from the Swedish delegation. And I think when listening to the responses, it was quite clear that the Swedish government didn't want to approach issues of land use in Sapmi from a human rights perspective, but rather they wished to discuss conflicts of interest and the need for improved dialogue and cooperation, etc. So you can see this subtle shift in terminology when you choose to use the word interest instead of actually using the word rights. So earlier this week, actually, the committee published its preliminary conclusions and recommendations to Sweden. And these recommendations include several areas that are of relevance to Sami rights in Sweden. And one of the recommendations that were particularly emphasized by the committee and where they expect Sweden to report back to the committee within 2 years is regards the act of consultation, and it says that that the state should ensure that this act is used in a manner that guarantees the Samis free, prior, and informed consent in all matters concerning them, and that public officials at all levels need to be educated, need to receive training on the significance of the consultation process and its importance for the Sami people. So I will shortly wrap up, but I just want to say that part of our job at the Institute for Human Rights is to make sure that such recommendations are kept alive, that they are not just they don't just fall into some desk drawer in Stockholm or sucked into some bureaucratic black hole, but they are actually kept alive for discussion. But I still think that at least one question that weighs on me is what we as an independent government institution with a broad human rights mandate, what we actually can do. Because, as I said, one of our central mandates is to monitor, investigate, and report on the human rights situation in Sweden, and to write these kinds of reports. But oftentimes I have this sense that maybe another report is not really what is the most valuable. Many times we actually have a quite extensive knowledge of the problems. What is lacking is the political will to actually act on the recommendations that have already been put forth by international committees like the committee that just reviewed Sweden. So the question is really what we can and what we should do. And I think one positive example for me, and just as a way of conclusion, was a conference that we organized in Luleå last September with lawyers and scholars focusing on indigenous rights in Sweden. And we did this in collaboration with Luleå University of Technology and the Silver Museum in Arjeplog. And for us, it was really just incredibly educational and a pleasure to participate in and follow these discussions. And I also believe that it was something that the participants themselves felt was actually missing, just this platform where you could discuss and exchange ideas in an open, inclusive way. So I'm convinced that we actually do have a certain role to play, and I think also one thing that we could add is that we can try to push more for knowledge and just awareness that indigenous rights are not just interests, but actually are an integral part of this international system for universal human rights. So I think I'll stop there, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Linda, for your insights. And there's a walking stick and chocolate for
Amazing.
you too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good friends, we are taking this with us, the insights that Linda brought and everything that we have discussed today when we are now entering the two final and brief panels, efficient panels of today. And in these panels, in the first one, we will talk to representatives of the upcoming and possibly upcoming European Capital of Culture, Aulo and Giron, and also on that panel, further elaborate together with Åsa Simma. I'm trying to find her in the audience. There she is. Wonderful. So first, this panel focusing on the upcoming European Capitals of Culture and the challenges and possibilities that we have discussed today. And then as the final panel with governmental bodies and funders of different kinds, also both the Sami Parliament, the Swedish Arts Council, and it's a great pleasure to also say that we have Amanda Lind, chair of the Cultural Committee of the Swedish Parliament, with us. So that will be a very important conversation. But first of all, I want to invite Aino Valovirta from Aulo 2026. Yes. And Per-Olof Nutti from Giron 2029, maybe. We hope so. And of course, the legend, the myth, Åsa Simma. Okay, we have to do, I think we'll do a little bit more of this redecorating that I've been doing today. Pull them together like that. Thank you all for coming, and I must say, I'm so excited. I'm so curious about these coming European cities of culture, capitals of culture, and I'm also super curious about, how do you feel after hearing this whole day of discussion concerning your projects? But I know first, because Aulo it's decided you will be the European Capital of Culture in 2026. There's no way back.
Yeah.
So tell me about, first of all, just briefly, tell me about the application process and the idea of becoming the European Capital of Culture. Where did it come from, and in what way were the Sami communities and arts and culture field involved in that process?
Well, the decision about applying for the Capital of Culture came about when Finland celebrated our 100th anniversary in 2017. So it began, and then the Sami were involved in the process from early on. So the Kielas Institute at the University of Oulu was taking part in the process, as well as the local Sami organization, Oulu Sami ry. And then one of our artistic, what should I call her? one of our artistic, what would be the word in English? Well, the people advising for the for the process was also Sami Tuojer and researcher Sikka-Mari Makka. So we had a heavy influence from the beginning on.
Did you receive any critique from the jury concerning the Sami participation in the application and the project as UMO did back in 2008? Or how did the jury respond to your kind of Sami content and anchoring of the project?
From what I've heard, I wasn't part of the organization back then, but what I've heard, they were really interested in the Sami participation in our project, because Oulu is located outside the Sami homeland area, so we are in a special situation in that way. And our idea of borderless Sami culture, crossing the borders between the countries, as we are here on the Swedish side at the moment, but also between the Sami homeland and then the rest of the country was interesting to them.
Can you also tell us a little bit about how you will work now for the next 2 years, because it's still 2 years until you open, and how you work with not only anchoring the project in the Sami communities and in the region, but also how you work on creating content, Sami content. Also, how is that done? What kind of process do you use, or mechanisms do you use to kind of create and produce Sami content?
Well, I began in a part-time role in this organization last year in January, and have worked as a full-time producer in our organization since January this year. And we didn't actually have any mechanisms in place when I began the work, but how I took about it was to discuss with the local community and with Sametikki and also with very widely with people from my community, from the Sami in general, and to see what were the needs of the local people, and then what were the needs that the larger community or the majority had. So this is a threefold project, I think. So firstly, I want to serve my own people and do things that will benefit the Sami in Oulu and in a more general way as well. And then I also need to raise awareness about the Sami, because as was discussed on these sofas before, there isn't very much knowledge about the Sami overall. So it's a never-ending process, I think, and I do what I can to make it end at some point. And then what I also want to do is to introduce these great Sami artists we have, so that we wouldn't have to be in that minority slot in some corner of this important event, so that somebody can say that the Sami are represented and there is diversity, but that the people would notice what amazing talent we have, so that it would be our legacy after 2026 as well.
Wonderful, thank you. I just want to add one last question concerning Oulu now, because when I was a child, I grew up on the border between Norway and Finland, in Sápmi, up north, of course. And I just remember from my childhood, and now also as a grown-up cultural worker, we have always kind of feared Finland when it comes to cultural appropriation, commercialization, commodification of the Sami culture. It was always like, Finland was the worst example of, how you can systematically commercialize Sami arts and culture in the worst way. So what measures are in place in your project to kind of prevent this commercialization and possible commodification, and also, of course, cultural appropriation in your project?
Well, I'd like to say there are a lot of mechanisms in place, but I think I am the first line of defense. So people often come to me with their ideas, and then I need to use my translation skills and tell them whether that's okay or whether that's a bit dubious or something you should reconsider perhaps. I think we are doing fairly well at the moment, and there haven't been that many signs of cultural appropriation, and it's also a topic we want to discuss as part of this process.
Thank you. Per-Olof, first of all, why do Giron want to become the European Capital of Culture 2029?
It's a very good question. If I say so, this is a municipality question, and it's been a part for a year now. We have a steering group. I'm a member of the steering group, and we work hard because we have no good budget. You know, the extremes, the situation in Kiruna municipality is that we have very bad economic now, and that's have been a main question when we take these decisions to make this to be a part of this project. So we say forward, and there is much work we have to do, especially as I feel like sometimes, and even now, a pink elephant in the room, because I have never speak for a municipality as a political. I'm right here just for Kiruna municipality. I am a reindeer herder at last. I have worked for the Sami Parliament. I'm a former president in the Sami Parliament. So for me, it's very strange to speak about not the right Sami rights, the way I used to do, and I always have done, to lift up our rights. So it's be a challenge for me to make difference in the steering group.
I can imagine. And I also have to ask you, might be a different elephant in the room, but I do know that the Sami Parliament in Sweden decided to not support the application for Giron, European Capital of Culture 2029, only 10 days ago. And I also read that you didn't support that decision. And of course, those who were against the application are not here to kind of defend their decision or view in this matter. But can you say something about the friction that obviously exists also within the Sami Parliament and then possibly within the Sami community concerning this application and the status as European Capital of Culture?
I think we are early in this process, so maybe it's strange even for the Sami Parliament to take decisions, but not, as I mentioned, there is no economical resource. You have to take this as the Sami Parliament has done. So I don't understand why they don't support us as Sami people in this community as Kiruna. And also the Sami villages. We have 8 Sami villages, Sami byar in the Kiruna municipality. We have a lot of Sami people who have done the work there, and just for the Sami culture, have to lift up them. Because today living in Kiruna as a Sami is very hard. There is racism is floating, and it's just because 2 things that I can main here. Is the case that Girja's case, and when that come to they give the right to the Samis to hunt and fish in this area, the Sami area, that's the Sami village. And that's have make it very, very hard to the Sami people, the Sami people to find a place in the Kiruna. And even to make the cultures, be able to make the culture there is very hard. For example, Kiruna Sami Theater, they have found 2 locations there in Kiruna, because they are moving all the city. But when you come up to the Sami question, that's always, I will say it always, you have to wait. That's number 2 or number 3 in the priority. So that's the way I have to say that even in Kiruna, we have to learn about the Sami traditional Sami rights. We are indigenous people. We are also minority, but it's so strange between to be an indigenous and minority. So I have always spoken that we Sami people are indigenous. We have all rights. So that's what we had to do in Kiruna. We had to accept that there is a two kind of people there, and to cooperate. It's a very key word for this. But it's going to be. I'm hopeful. I think we're going to make it, but we must. There is more barriers, so we have to break.
Thank you. Speaking of hopefulness, Åsa, how are you feeling about the possible status as European Capital of Culture for Giron?
Well, first of all, I would like to just continue on what you started, and it's the fact that what I was invited to be part of the group for the application that was sent in, and I withdraw.
Why?
And I'm not going to tell that right now. Maybe you will understand when I have finished speaking. What I feel in Kiruna, what is quite hard, of course, the racism that you talk about very much, and also this the minority versus indigenous people. I mean, we also have minorities within the indigenous people. So we have to take care of them too in our own culture. And I feel like there's like a forced marriage, that Sami people has to be forced married to the other group, the minority group. And you can't get married if you're not in love. That's my opinion. But nevertheless, I would like to talk about a really good example of, now it's not a culture capital or event, it's Kultur Sápmi. I've been on a few of them. It's arranged by the Sami Council, and it's a pan-Nordic meeting with artists and culture workers. And in the autumn, in September, I was in Anar, because that's a place where new ideas are presented. And it's a place to talk and discuss things with no outside observers. So you can go discuss very sensitive issues with Sami artists, sensitive issues in our culture, sacred issues from our culture are brought up. And I find it extremely strengthening to participate in Culture Sápmi. And it has a long-term sort of effect on me as a Sami culture worker after I've been at the Culture Sápmi events. And this, what the long-term effect, I think, should be the key word for the culture capital, Giron, Oulu, of course. That is not only the year it happens. The culture capital year should be the change maker for the issues that we are dealing with in the Sami community, in the Sami culture. And also, like, remembering that the borders, we never created the borders. We do have our brothers and sisters in Finland and Norway, and we need each other to develop and take the Sami culture further. So in that sense, it should be a demand on the culture capitals that have Sami people to assure a future and a place and take the culture, make it develop.
Thank you, Åsa, and also to kind of give some input to the next panel with funders and governmental bodies. How, because I hear you're talking about that the impact and the effects of these projects are in a way more important than the actual activities going on. You know, you have to see the effects and the impact of it. And how is it possible to measure the effects? You know, what kind of effects do you want to see? What would be the most important effects for Aulo and Giron? And also now, 10 years after UMO 2014, we know something about what happened here. But what are your expectations, and how can we measure the impact?
Yeah, I'm thinking. We've been now here for a few days. Some of you came just today, but we've been discussing in many forums here yesterday as well. And we all, I think one good thing Anne Vuolab said yesterday, which I really like, was the fact that get together all the Sami cultural workers and institutions because we are experts on surviving projects. You know, and this to surviving project, it's not a long term. You know, it doesn't develop our culture, and this for me, I feel like if anything with the culture capital happens, both in Oulu and in Kiruna, we should be assured that the Sami cultural expressions get long-term resources.
Thank you. I will let actually that be the last word, and we'll bring that on to the next panel. Thank you so much to Åsa, Per-Olof, and Aino. And we'll have a change of scenery. So while you step down, I will invite Veronica Lampa Lönnbro from Swedish Arts Council. Yeah, round of applause.